Hi, my name is Christian Nielsen, and I am a Danish DJ producer from Copenhagen. Today, I'm in my studio where I'm going to show you guys how I made my track Come to Life, which is out on Gorgon City's Realm Records. So the first thing we're going to look at, which is the first thing that started this track, is the hook. Every time when I start making a track, the first thing I'll look at is a hook. So a hook in the world of house and techno can be a lot of different things, and it could be anything from some kind of a synth or a melody, or even some kind of percussion sound that just kind of stands out. And that's kind of the important thing is, looking for hook, is to make a track stand out in some way or another. Make it stand out from all the other tracks released the same day on Beatport or whatever. In this case, the hook was the vocals, and I found them on Splice, which is a great tool for producers. I hope you guys check it out. And I'll display the hook for you guys, and then we'll go through what I did with it.
If you get it, if you really want it, you do what you've got to do, make it come to life. If you need it, then believe and be. You do what you've got to do, make it come to life. Let it into your heart. Always follow who you are. Come to life. Come to life.
So that was the big break, if you want to put it that way. And there, so let's look at the vocal part itself. So there's a few things I always do when I work with vocals. The first thing is I put CLA vocals on it from Waves, and I don't really do that much besides that. I just put it on and I let the standard settings be on it, and it just kind of gives me like a little bit more depth to the sound, and it gives it a bit more a stereo feel and a delay and a reverb, everything like that. It just puts it on it right away, and it just works for me every time. I honestly, every time I've used the vocals, I've always put CLA vocals on it, and I never changed the settings. So that's the first thing I did with it. There's obviously, I put a reverb. I don't know if you could hear it in the break. It builds up. I use the reverb to build up the break. I've always done that. I've done it on, I also do it on drums. If I have like a top line drums in the break, I'll reverb that and make the reverb bigger and bigger and bigger until the big break. It's an easy way to do it without using too many effects. For example, if you want to do like a more minimalist tech house track, for example. So after that, I pitched it down. I'll try and play it for you without the pitch.
If you really want it, you do what you've got to do, make it come to life. If you need it, then believe and be. You do what you've got to do, make it come to life.
So I put it back on again. I hope you guys could hear the difference. The reason I've done that in quite a few tracks actually, where I pitch down the vocals. And the reason why I do it is because, well, the vocals I normally find are like, they could be a little bit high pitched for me and sound a bit too, I don't know what the word is, a lack of soul, if you want to put it that way. Like, and I mean like soul music. I would like it a little bit deeper. So I pitch it down, and then I keep the key, obviously. But besides that, I don't really do anything else. And then it just kind of gets a warmer feeling to it, and which I enjoy, at least in my tracks. EQ wise, I do this the same as pretty much every other track. I'll show you guys on some other things. I take away as much bass as I can, and I take some of the top off too, mostly because, when it comes to vocals, I only take as much bass out until I can hear like the difference. So I'll give you an example of what I do. Let me just remove the. So now it's full with full EQ, normal EQ.
If you get it, if you really want it, you do what you've got to do, make it come to life.
So what I do here is, I don't know if you can see it, I'll see if I can make it a bit bigger for you guys. So I kind of just play it out, play the track or the vocals out, and then I just move the EQ until I can hear a difference. So as soon as I hear a difference in the vocal, I'll stop and go a little bit back again, just to give the rest of the track with the vocals with the rest of the track a little bit more air. So it doesn't interfere with the bass line or something else that does need that space or those frequencies. All right, so the next part of the track that was important to me, obviously when you find the vocals, you start building on the whole melody line. So in this case, it was the bass line. And the bass line sounds like this. So a really subby bass line. For this track, I used a very basic sub. And the reason why I did that is because I had the idea of already putting loads of synths on top, something that gives some groove and a lead or some plucks or something like that. So if I kept the bass line fairly simple, frequency-wise too, there would be more room to do lots of other things. So on the bass line, again, I use CLA from Waves. And in this case, I just put on CLA bass. That's what it's called. And again, I don't really mess with the settings. I just let it be, just use the standard settings. And that's pretty much it. And then for side chaining, so it doesn't mix up with the kicks. If you guys don't know what side chaining is, please Google it. And you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. I actually use Nicky Romero's Kickstart VST, which is a really simple and easy plugin to use. I've used it for quite a while now, and I use it on lots of different things. I use it on bass lines, obviously, but I also use it on top lines, on drums. Sometimes I just do it to give the track a bit more groove, and it works. I feel it works. So what else? We have some synths we have to look at here. So the main lead sounds like this. So it's not really the main lead because the main lead is in my view the vocals, but it's kind of like I use it in the breaks. As soon as it drops down, then that synth will drop in. I actually put CLA vocals on it. I do that on some of the high frequency synth sounds I have, just because it gives a bit more depth and a bit more. It makes them a bit more wider. And on this one, I've actually also used the S1 imager from Waves, and I just, I panned it out as much as I could, just to give it that big room feel, if you will. The other vocal, there's a vocal that is constant in the track. I think it's this one. So obviously I EQ'd this one the same way as I EQ'd the vocals with, I take all the sub sounds out and all the top frequencies out. Mostly because it's not really a synth sound that has to be heard as much as just contribute to the rhythm and the groove of the track. Another one, there's one more actually here. So this is the bass line that is supposed to fit with the sub bass. So obviously on this bass sound, I've taken most of the sub away, the same way as I did it with the vocals. So it doesn't interfere with the sub bass, and I just pulled it as much as I could until it started changing the sound of the sample. If you can hear it, it dips a bit. And that is, again, the Nicky Romero kickstart, which I used there to, again, mostly, not only to not interfere with the kick and the rest of the track, but mostly to give it a groove to fit the rest of the track. So let's see, is there more synth work? I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's move on to the drums. I started out with this sample. You can try and hear it for a second. So that was a sample I found on Splice 2, and it gave me that like this old school rave feeling, or maybe even more like even a drum and bass feel to it. And I kind of like the idea of that together with the bass line. That's what really got me. You can try and hear it together. So the whole production of the drums was kind of easy from there, because I kind of already had the hook, if you will, when it comes to the drums. EQing wise, I took as much of the top off as I could, and the same with the sub and the lower frequencies, because I needed to fit with the kick. Besides that, I put CLA drums on it too. Again, CLA from Waves, and again, pretty much standard settings. I think, yeah, I moved the gate a bit just to remove some of the lower sounds that had, you know, I tried to strip the sound as much as I could. When you're working with a sample like that, you have to like try and take away some of the sounds that are unnecessary to the rest of the track, because you want to add other stuff on. So when I had that, I added some extra stuff. That was the percussion, sorry. Very subtle percussion, and I added this hat onto it. The reason why I added the hat, maybe you wouldn't even have to do it, because there's lots of sound in it, but I added it because I felt there was a need to fill out the frequencies with a hat and add on a bit of groove to it. You can try and hear it together. So, all those things together. 3 tracks, that's pretty much it. And then at the end, I added my kick. And this kick, I can't really tell that much about it, because I've had this sample kick for ages, and I've used it on so many of my tracks. I'm pretty sure almost most of the tracks I probably use this exact kick. Sometimes I'll probably add a kick on top of it, but this one fills out the gap of like you want the sub feeling to the kick, but you also want it to hit that sweet spot. I can't remember where you would consider the sweet spot would be around. Hang on one second. Yeah, around like 50, between 50 and 100 would be like, it has to peak there for me. And when you especially this kick, it just sounds really good on a good sound system, and it sounds really good on headphones for the people listening on Spotify and God knows what. So that was the drums. Okay, so what are we looking at now? What do we need? So after I found all these different sounds and I put the loops together, the way I work is I start working in like a few bars where I just loop the whole thing. When I've done that, I'll copy it and move it to the side and say, okay, this is the break, this is the first part of the track, this is the end of the track, and I'll like kind of slowly create small loops that I can kind of just copy paste into the track while building it. So after I've done that, because I obviously it's a house track, or like a tech house track, or whatever you want to call it. Even in if I am producing techno music, there's some things you kind of have to have in the track. That's the way I see it. You have to have your, an intro with only the beat, and you need the end to only have the beat. You need at least one big break, and then you can make small breaks in the middle. So it's for me, because I've been doing this for so many years, it's pretty easy just to copy paste them in, almost without even listening to the track. Just kind of, I know what sounds I'm working with. When I've done that, I normally turn off the track for quite a while. Maybe I'll come back to it like 2 days after, and then I start adding effects and automations the way I want it to be. So like in the case of this track, I was working on the automation for the vocals in the breaks to like make it build up slowly. And I'll try and explain it to you. So in the beginning of this part, there's no reverb. And then slowly now, I build the reverb. You do what you've got to do, make it come to life. Let it into your heart. Always follow where you are. So obviously I could do it without and just use some of the effects I've already added on, but it gives a really it widens the track in the breaks. Because obviously, when you make breaks, you kind of strip down a lot of the track. You remove some of the drums. You remove a lot of the bass and the kick. So it can, if you don't add like some kind of automation or some effect or something like that, it'll kind of get that flat feeling. I know for many years, well, when I started out making tracks, I always found it really difficult to make the breaks really build up perfectly. Even though I had effects and sample banks around, I kind of needed something extra, and then I kind of started playing around with the echo or the reverbs, and then you can automate it your way out of it. You could easily add an echo, maybe even like a short echo, to build until the end of the track, to the break. So together with the rest of the track, it sounds like this. Believe in me. You do what you've got to do when you come to life. Let it into your heart. Always follow where you are. Come to life. Come to life. So, adding effects and like finishing the track, there's not much to say besides the fact that there are some things you can do to the different effects samples that you're using. I tend to use a lot of samples. I have a large bank of samples, so I know exactly what to use when it comes to like building the breaks and God knows what. So if we take an example here, let's use this one. This one's a really one I've used many times. A very simple white noise build sound, which every house, tech house and techno producer just has laying around somewhere. There's also this one. I have one more on top actually, but I also have, let me just find it here. Oh, this one. So besides just adding them on where I see fit, I normally always do some things with the effects just to make them fit the track. So the first thing I normally do is I EQ them as much as I can. I do it the same way as I did with the vocals. I will cut off all the low frequencies as much as I can, without them changing the sound of the sample. And I also take a lot of the high end, because the high ends, especially with these kind of build samples, they can really just take over the whole track, and just, you know, fill the whole frequency level on the high ends, and it'll just sound really messy. So try and just, you know, open up your EQ, and then just slowly EQ the sub and the top frequencies. Not too much, because you can also lose some of the dynamics in it, but just a little bit. And if you do that on every sample and all the effects you use, you'll see that you'll have a lot more space for doing your mix downs and so on and so forth. Another trick is also, especially with a sound like this, because it's a continuous sound. So I always, very often at least, put kickstart on it again, or a sidechain it if you don't want to use kickstart. Again, also to give the effect some rhythm to it, but also to not make, so if it's a sound that goes together with the kick, or like with that rhythm of it, it will just kind of complement it instead of taking over that part of it. And don't forget to use a widener if you can. I use S1 imager from Waves. I feel it's a great tool to use. And you can also use the imaging tool, stereo spread from Logic, which is also a great tool to use. Just remember to change the settings a bit, because it's a very sensitive tool. I want to talk to you guys about how I work with tracks. It's not really focused on this track, but it's more like a tip, or the way I work with tracks, because I know many of you guys probably, I've had loads of problems how to finish a track, and sometimes you can sit with the track for ages and you just never finish it. Sorry. So for me, the way I work with tracks is I work on many tracks at one time. So it's not because I have lots of projects open at one time, but I'll work with, like this track, I'll work with the loop and just try and get as much content as I can. And if I feel I'm not really getting anywhere, I'll take a gut check, if you will. Is this something that I want to continue working on? Yes, then I'll save it. If not, I'll delete it right away, because it's just gonna fill it's gonna be a distraction. So I'll like, currently I'm working on, I think, like 8 different tracks, where I just I open it, if I don't feel it, go to the next one, go to the next one, and go to the next one. So what often happens is, at one point while you're working with these tracks, one of the many tracks you're working on, suddenly there's one of the tracks suddenly it's almost finished. So you can start doing the whole process again about, building the track, and then adding the effects and adding the automation, and then just adding that extra sparkle to it, if you will. And then suddenly you have a track done. And then suddenly, without knowing, you have 3 or 4 tracks done. It's a way of working that fits me. It doesn't necessarily fit other people. I know lots of other producers that, like to sit and work on one track for ages and really just go into it. But for me, at least, I tend to get bored with working with one track, and I'll get frustrated if I don't get that sound I'm looking for. And sometimes, inspiration, the track you're working on can inspire you on one of the other tracks you're working on. So you're constantly inspiring yourself without actually knowing it. So for me, that was a tip, or something I kind of that evolved during the years of producing. So I think that's pretty much it. So I guess I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope you guys found it inspiring. And if you like the track, hopefully there'll be a link down there somewhere. If not, it's called Come to Life. My name is Christian Nielsen, and you can find me on Spotify, on Beatport, on iTunes, or whatever you want. And don't forget to follow me on all the socials. There should be links down there somewhere, or else just Google is your friend, I guess. Bye, guys.